In the Motor City, Hollow Hearts. McCarthy lost his struggle against leukemia yesterday at the age of 62. Our coverage today begins with Channel 7 Cheryl Choden. She's down at the Fisher Building, the home of WJR Radio, with this live-action camera report. Cheryl?
And Frank, so many people expressing so much sadness today over the unexpected death of J.P. McCarthy. His family, his wife and children understandably grieving in private. But his colleagues here at WJR, high atop the Fisher Building, really cannot. They know that even though J.P. McCarthy will never return, the show must go on. And that's what happened this morning.
I have been in radio all of my adult life, which means that I have never, ever had a real job.
His chair was empty and his microphone was sadly silent. But listeners of WJR Radio heard his wonderful voice today, a voice they have heard for more than 30 years.
What am I doing here? But I love it.
WJR producers worked through the night and through their grief to put together some of JP's special moments as a tribute to their fallen friend. The music alone rekindled fond memories.
It's a sense of loss that's difficult for me to describe.
It was a tough day for everyone connected to the radio station and really a tough time for all of JP's friends. Many well-known friends like former Channel 7 sportscaster Dave Dials, who choked up as he listened to an old J.P. Dials interview.
Dave Dials probably does the best eulogies of anyone on the face of the earth. I've said that before. And when I go, if Dave is still around, it would be my fondest wish that he does mine.
Oh. What am I to say to that? JP has, pardon me, I'm having a little difficult time. JP over the years has said that to me.
And then there was this JP Mickey Mantle interview, two Hall of Famers now gone.
He is, in fact, the Babe Ruth of our time. What a pleasure to see him in the flesh and looking wonderful.
Thanks a lot, JP. I haven't been back to Detroit for a long time. I used to love to play here.
And then, all day long, there was this.
I'm so sad for all you people at WJR that worked with him and knew him. I listened to him every morning at work for the last 12 years.
I found out about JP last night in the news and really felt that I lost a true friend.
No word on what might happen to JP's ever-popular morning spot, because right now everyone who knew and loved him is dealing with the loss.
The man who was king of mornings on this radio station for nearly as long as most of us remember is gone. He was a giant who leaves a mighty footprint.
A big footprint. Yesterday, the general manager of WJR, Mike Feasy, told me that it will be a huge challenge, his biggest challenge. But he said he won't be filling the shoes of J.P. McCarthy, but someone will have to follow in his footsteps. Reporting live at the Fisher Building, I'm Cheryl Choden. Back to you, Frank.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. J.P. McCarthy demonstrated enormous staying power, 30 years worth, in a business that chews up talent and spits them out. Without him, waking up in the morning will never be the same in Detroit. Mary?
The question many people are now asking is, how will Detroit pay tribute to J.P. McCarthy? Many considered him the heart and soul of this city. Those who made McCarthy part of their lives each day want to see the radio personality remembered in a special way.
Where he's at now is going to be a great thing for God. That's my thinking of him.
Why?
Why? Because he's going to do the morning radio show up there. And that's my thinking. For God.
At the senior citizen picnic today on Detroit's jewel, Belle Isle, they're talking about the loss of another treasure, J.P. McCarthy. Many are hoping that the city does something to honor J.P.'s life for his dedication to Detroit and area charities.
I'd love to see a nice memorial in his name. Just like a Hart Plaza for Philip Hart. Be something nice for him, too.
I would even suggest that a portion of the area around the Fisher Building ought to be named J.P. McCarthy Strip or Boulevard or Avenue or something. Maybe even the studio itself should now bear his name, because he is responsible for a good portion of those 50,000 watts that they generate.
I would love to be a part of paying homage or celebrating the life of a person as great as J.P. McCarthy. This is a guy who transcended everything. Every place I've gone today, and late yesterday, they were talking about J.P. McCarthy. People who you never even think would listen to J.P. or be aware of J.P., but everyone knows J.P. McCarthy.
The Detroit City Council is in recess right now, but they'll return in September, and it's expected a tribute for J.P. McCarthy will be considered at that time. Frank?
J.P. McCarthy was more than just a friendly voice on the radio. He was also a man who gave generously of his time and worked hard for charities in the area, especially the Police Athletic League. Channel 7's Val Clark joins us now with that story. And that's really the true mark of somebody in the community, is giving of themselves.
Absolutely. He was a bridge builder between the city and the suburbs. He'll be missed for so many reasons. J.P. McCarthy was the best pal the Police Athletic League ever had. The $160,000 he raised this summer alone was PAL's financial backbone. And like the work he did on the radio, the work he did for PAL seemed effortless.
To be sure, J.P. McCarthy was having fun. But make no mistake, whether piloting the Bob Lowe boat for PAL each year or hosting the annual PAL golf tournament, he was working, tirelessly giving of himself and his valuable time, all the while soliciting money for the charities he held so dear. Although J.P. was affiliated with dozens of organizations, he had a definite soft spot for PAL.
It's kind of hard, to quantify just the kind of thing that he meant to not only just to PAL, but to a lot of other charities and other people, just a strong base for a lot of things, but definitely a base for PAL.
Although many of the young people living here at the Herman Gardens projects really don't know exactly who J.P. McCarthy was, through his tireless generosity, their lives are being enriched. This recreational and educational center is the direct result of $163,000 J.P. raised this summer alone at his PAL golf tournament. It includes a game room, mentoring program, study hall, and a computer room.
If I learn the skills on technology, I can almost do anything. So I think this is a very educational program. I think I'm getting a lot out of it.
And J.P. didn't just raise money. He took an active role and even rescued one baseball tournament.
If it had not been for J.P. and the staff, the Detroit PAL, 8 and under Roberto Clemente division would have not participated in the Little League World Series last year. Really like to thank J.P., and we're going to miss him. Bless his soul.
Can't say it any better than that. Now, among J.P.'s other favorite charities, Focus Hope, the Capuchin Kitchen, St. Joseph Mercy Hospital, his high school, De La Salle, his college alma mater, U of D Mercy, and the Leukemia Society of America. And by the way, the McCarthy family is asking, instead of flowers, please send a donation to the Leukemia Society of America. And as for PAL, it only hopes J.P.'s love for that organization will continue to influence people to support it. Mary, Frank?
You think it's likely that some of these organizations will establish new charitable funds in his name?
I think they will. In fact, the officer said to us, Lieutenant Cotton, if you're okay with J.P., you're okay with a lot of people. And that's what he's hoping, that everyone will remember PAL as J.P. did. Because it's important. Their budget comes from donations.
Rely on that heavily.
Yes.
Exactly.
Thanks, man.
Thanks. Well, J.P.'s influence will be measured by more than the ratings that he dominated or the awards that he was showered with. Young broadcasters still waiting for their big break have been inspired by J.P.'s incredible career. Channel 7's John Kleekamp has their story.
Economy is slowing, though that is not what concerns analysts like.
The studios and hallways of the Specs Howard School in Southfield are crowded with students who share the dream of someday making it big in broadcasting.
WNLD 640 AM Southfield, Robert J. Richards here at 12:18, and glad to be sharing my coffee with you.
Students here tend to be a lot younger than Robert Richards. The 31-year-old Plymouth man finally decided to pursue his dream of a career in radio only after he was laid off from his much more practical job as an engineer. And one of the reasons he made the leap was a guy named J.P. McCarthy.
Hopefully I'll get a shot someday. That's the way it happened for J.P. He was a staff announcer and got a shot one day. He took over a shift for somebody else, and a legend was born.
For aspiring broadcasters, these audio booths at Specs Howard is the place to go to practice and polish their on-air radio skills. But it was J.P. McCarthy on WJR that they would turn to for inspiration. Like many of JP's fans, Robert is deeply saddened by the sudden passing of WJR's morning man, but not just because a familiar and friendly voice has been silenced. For Robert, McCarthy was someone to learn from.
But I feel cheated because I will not have the opportunity to spend more time with JP is what it amounts to. I can't tune him in on the radio, and more to the point, if I ever get the opportunity to work at JR, there's going to be, his ghost will be there.
In Southfield, I'm John Kleekamp, Channel 7 Action News reporting.
His questions were thoughtful and intelligent. His manner was always courteous. In an age of sleaze and tabloid talk shows, J.P. McCarthy's interviews were a class act. So it was with great admiration that Channel 7 put J.P. on the other side of the microphone for a close-up interview 5 years ago. And it was clear from the outset that this millionaire media mogul had not lost touch with his audience.
I'd never forgotten where I came from. And where I came from, it was probably more blue-collar than white-collar, though a mixture of both, I think. I think Detroit's always gotten a bad rap as a lunch bucket town. It may be that, but it's a whole lot more. I don't think this is such a tank town, and I don't think you have to wear white socks and go to the lowest common denominator to succeed in this town either.
J.P. McCarthy understood Detroit. He understood the guy who worked the third shift on the assembly line, and he understood the guy in the front office at General Motors. His ability to connect to his listeners is what catapulted his show to one of the most listened to and respected in the nation. But he admits the show changed over the years.
I think it evolves. I don't think I'm the same guy you listened to back in 1961.
J.P. understood the power of his position, but he never abused it.
I think I have a very loyal audience, and I might be able to swing their opinion my way if it were a good call and a very close call. But I certainly don't manipulate them, nor do I think I can, and nor do I think I should.
JP's intellect, his curiosity, his ability to grow, that's what made his show compelling even after 30 years.
I love doing what I do. As long as it's fun, as long as it's interesting, and as long as I'm any good, I'm going to stay doing it. What else would I do?
That's it, boys.
You know, I agree with the guy who said JP is probably doing interviews in heaven right now. Channel 7's Eric Smith will share his special memories of JP a bit later in this newscast. The McCarthy family has chosen to limit the visitation and funeral services to family members and personal friends only. Visitation will take place at the Desmond & Sons Funeral Home on Crooks Road in Troy between 3 and 9 p.m. tomorrow. The funeral mass will be at St. Hugo of the Hills Church in Bloomfield Hills Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. The family is requesting no flowers. Instead, memorials may be sent to the Leukemia Society of America at 21617 Harper Road in St. Clair Shores. The zip code is 48080. Once again, the visitation and funeral mass are limited to family and personal friends only, please. Joseph Priestley McCarthy will be laid to rest at Whitechapel Cemetery in Troy. He was 62.
Here in the media, especially hard. Channel 7's Eric Smith knew JP for several decades and fondly called him friend. Tonight, Eric shares the special memories he has for Joseph Priestley McCarthy.
I think the one thing about Joe I'll always remember is simply that he made me want to be Irish. He was the town's, no, I think quintessential Irishman. He embodied everything about it that we all love, and St. Patrick's Day just is not going to be the same without him. Neither is opening day at the ballpark or, well, any number of things that J.P. McCarthy had his personal stamp on. Joe and I were, in a strange sense, I guess, competitors for the past 25, 30 years. He was undoubtedly the king of morning radio in Detroit, and I guess he made me aspire to maybe the throne of morning television. Joe was just one of Detroit's most special people. He always had time for charities. I don't know where he found it. In fact, not many months ago, I asked him, I said, how do you do it? You get up so early in the morning, and yet you're willing to stay up late at night. And he said, well, I take a nap in the afternoon. And it just amazed me, his stamina and ability to do good things for good people. Joe was, in many ways, I think, the Motor City's heartbeat. You get up in the morning and you listen to Joe, if you weren't watching Channel 7. It just is not going to be the same. Joseph Priestley McCarthy was a special imprint on all of our lives. And the big WJR studio is just going to be awfully empty. To say all of us are going to miss J.P. McCarthy just simply is not saying enough. Joseph Priestley was a special man and a good friend.
And Eric really sums it up for all of us. That wraps up Action News at 5. Thank you very much for joining us. Please stay.
Man who made a difference.
J.P. McCarthy touched the lives of millions during 3 decades on the radio.
For many, he was a dependable friend. They never met face to face, but come time for JP on WJR, they could always count on the great voice of the Great Lakes.
There is only one way to introduce my next guest.
The man is gone, but the voice of a legend lives on in the lives he touched and the difference he made as a man who cared about his community. Our Team 7 coverage of the tribute to JP begins with Channel 7's Cheryl Choden in this live action camera report. Cheryl?
Well, Diana, as you can imagine, this has been a really difficult day for the people who work at and run WJR Radio here in the Fisher Building. They wanted and needed to grieve, but they knew their listeners needed to grieve as well. And so what they did was put together a tribute of special moments of JP on the air, and then they let their listeners call in all day long and share their thoughts and feelings.
He was kind of JP, and I will miss him, and I've always loved him.
And for the past 20 years, the alarm clock's gone off at 6:15, and when his theme music would come on, that would be the start of our day. And
WJR Radio had its own special format today, a long and sometimes tearful tribute to J.P. McCarthy, the voice of the radio station, a friend to all, a warm and generous man who lost his battle with a deadly blood disease yesterday.
The man who was king of mornings on this radio station for nearly as long as most of us remember is gone. He was a giant who leaves a mighty footprint.
The calls from listeners were nonstop.
JP made me feel very proud of being in Detroit, and being a Detroiter.
I listen to him every morning at work for the last 12 years. I'm just so sad for everybody.
The words of praise from well-known friends were nonstop.
As big a star as he was, and he knew that he was, there's no question about that, he was so generous with his time and touched many, many lives.
But this is what the radio station had to do today, because as the saying goes, the show must go on, and it did, at times taking on its own direction. The music, at 62 years old, JP died at a New York hospital yesterday, reportedly from pneumonia, a complication from an unpredictable blood disorder, an illness just revealed about 2 weeks ago. And that was the big shock, that he died so suddenly.
J.P. McCarthy left a mark on this radio station, on this city indeed, that will last for years to come.
Listeners have been calling into WJR all day long and will continue into the evening because that's what they need to talk about right now. That's what they want to talk about. J.P. McCarthy really was born in New York but moved to Detroit when he was 10 years old and considered Detroit his home. He has a wife and 6 children, and understandably they have chosen right now to grieve in private, and our thoughts go out to them. Reporting live at the Fisher Building, I'm Cheryl Choden. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Cheryl. JP announced his illness about 2 weeks ago, but colleagues at WJR say they noticed a dramatic change in his energy level around the 1st of last month. Frank?
Dave Dials, a former Channel 7 and network sportscaster, was a longtime friend of J.P. McCarthy, and he joins us now live by telephone from his home in North Carolina. Dave, thanks for being with us.
Frank, thank you, and Diana. It's a pleasure to be with you under such circumstances.
You know, what has saddened so many people here and frustrated them really is that they didn't have a chance to say goodbye, to express so many of the feelings that they're expressing now. When was the last time that you had a good talk with JP, and what'd you talk about?
Well, he would call me here occasionally. We would talk quite a bit on the phone. I went up there last year to be one of the roasters at a special dinner for him. And I think the last time we talked at length is when my colleague Howard Cosell died. And JP, of course, knew Howard very well, as he knew everybody in the country. And we talked at great length before we went on the air that early one morning, and then after we got off the air. And so we maintained a very good line of communication through the years.
Dave, it's great to say hello to you.
Hi, Diana. How are you?
Okay, thank you. It's one thing I remember when you were here. We would all gather around because you were just a great teller of stories. Tell us just maybe one story. Share something with us about JP that you remember.
Well, I can tell you something that, you know, I'm fairly blunt. At one time, there was an article in the Free Press proclaiming that Dave Dials was going to go through a divorce. And a member of the Detroit official family, who was known to get overserved once in a while, called JP that morning. And as you know, JP's show was not tape delayed, and the phone calls weren't. And he said, "I'd like to nominate Dave Dials for Loser of the Day." And I heard it, and I was furious. And I was so, because it's a very ugly thing, and it's a very personal thing, and it's not a happy time, and divorce is a very difficult thing. And I called this man down at City Hall in Detroit, and I was ready to go down and thump him. And he said, "Don't be mad. JP just called me." As soon as JP heard that on the air and heard the man say that, he went to a commercial, and he called the guy back, and he said, "That was really no class. You shouldn't have done it." And so that was a very personal and intimate thing that he did. And he and I had many moments like that. We had a lot of good times together. We shared a lot of stories together, and he was very, very supportive of me when I would have a new book coming out or anything at all. He was always very, very generous. And, you know, one of the things that I think we forget is that we have unfortunately been swept into a kind of a pitiful pattern that I call the elevation of the mediocre. Sometimes bordering on deification, we exalt people of very modest skills. They have one hit record or one decent book or one decent performance, and we bestow upon them I guess, a much loftier status than they really have earned. And so we then toss about terms like superstar and legend until they really almost become commonplace.
Oh, Dave, thank you so much. I know that you could go on, and we could sit here and maybe do the whole hour, but you know about television and times. So thanks so much for joining us. And hello to the family, please.
All right, thank you.
Okay. J.P. McCarthy touched the lives of many people who knew him and listened to him. But for one man who grew up with J.P., his thoughtfulness went far beyond just a kind word. As Channel 7's Mary Conway tells us, for Tom Livingston, J.P.'s help meant the difference between life and death.
I've got this token on my right now that designates that I've been sober for 13 years last Tuesday. And although he doesn't know it, Joe had a little part in that.
Tom Livingston is a recovering alcoholic, and he says when he was down and out, he was living in dumpsters like these in the Cass corridor. And he says he would have died here if it hadn't been for help that he received from someone that he remembered from his old neighborhood, J.P. McCarthy. Livingston grew up across the street from J.P. on Detroit's east side. When he found himself down and out, living in the Cass corridor, even suicidal, he thought of Joe.
Yeah, is this Priestley? He says, "Who is this? How do you know my name is Priestley?" You know, I says, "Tom Livingston." He says, "Oh, my God." And I said, "Joe, I'm living in garages and dumpsters and et cetera in the Cass corridor, and I need a place I need a roof over my head and something to eat." He said, "No problem. You know, you got it."
Joe didn't just give him money. He helped get him into Sacred Heart Treatment Center and out of the gutter.
Everybody knew Father Quinn, and everybody knew J.P. McCarthy, you know. So they got their heads together, and I got back into Sacred Heart. That was on August the 8th, 1982. And from that day to this day, I haven't had a drink.
Tom called us because he wanted people to know that Joe didn't just do the big public fundraisers. He helped countless little guys just like him.
That's only a little thing compared to the huge thing that he did in the city. That's a little thing that nobody else knows about, except us now, you know. And he was a great person to me.
Livingston credits God with keeping him sober and saving his life. But he also credits J.P. McCarthy for helping him get sober. From the Cass Corridor, I'm Mary Conway, Channel 7 Action News, reporting.
All services for J.P. McCarthy will be closed to the public. Visitation for friends and family is scheduled for tomorrow between 3 and 9 p.m. It will be at the Desmond Funeral Home on Crooks Road in Troy. The funeral, which is also private, will be on Saturday at 10 in the morning. The service will be held at the St. Hugo of the Hills Church in Bloomfield Hills. Frank?
Although we've all been saddened by JP's untimely death, for some of us, it's truly a devastating blow. Patients who share his disease and followed his quest for a bone marrow transplant say it's especially difficult for them. Channel 7's Val Clark spoke with one leukemia victim today and joins us with his story. I guess it's kind of hard to keep up hope when you've seen JP pass.
Extremely, and he put aside his pain today to speak with us. Hundreds of people living in Michigan desperately need bone marrow transplants. Most, but not all of them, are suffering from leukemia. Many were keeping a hopeful eye on J.P. McCarthy's progress. For one patient, the last few weeks have been, in his words, an emotional as well as physical roller coaster ride. Just 1 month ago, Glenn Smith was diagnosed with 2 different kinds of leukemia. Still, there's a 1 in 5,000 chance someone out there is his perfect bone marrow match. Glenn and his family were filled with hope when hundreds of potential donors were tested for J.P. McCarthy, bolstered by the knowledge one of them could save his life.
When someone of a celebrity status has such a following, it was uplifting to know that hundreds and thousands of people were gathering to his aid, which gave hope to people like myself and others.
But when he heard J.P. had passed,
well, it was quite a kick in the gut. I mean, he gave us so much hope, and it just seemed so sudden. It saddened me quite a bit. It made me kind of afraid.
the Smith family is getting emotional and financial support from a group called My Friends Care, specifically founded to help people who need bone marrow transplants. Jean Williamson became a volunteer soon after losing her own teenage son, Frank, to leukemia.
How hard is it for you to deal with this on a daily basis?
We have a lot of successes. As far as the success rate, it depends on the type of leukemia and the different types of cancer. Some is real high and some is pretty low hope. And I just concentrate on the ones we help.
Despite his apprehension following JP's death, Glenn may be cured thanks to JP's would-be donors. So far at Beaumont Hospital, more than 1,000 people have been tested and more than 2,000 at St. Joseph Mercy. If you'd prefer to make a financial donation, the McCarthy family says, instead of flowers, please send what you can to the Leukemia Society of America at 21617 Harper, St. Clair Shores, Michigan, 48080. We hope you had a chance to get that address. It didn't come up on the screen. My Friends Care did, and they need help too. In fact, the people who work at My Friends Care say 99% of their calls are for people who need help. Now, they would love to hear from a few more out there who are in a position to help. Now, whether that means donating money, time, or bone marrow. And we have really gotten an education, Frank and Diana.
And we're not talking about a lot of time. No. Maybe a couple hours a week would help them out, and not a lot of money, even a few dollars. They can find a way to work with it.
It goes a long way, and the need is really overwhelming. I've really learned that in the past couple weeks.
Like every little bit helps.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Val.
Thanks, Val.
Thank you. The death of JP leaves a deafening void in the airwaves of a very competitive radio market in Detroit.
Let's be honest, nobody could ever replace the great voice, but somebody has to fill the great void. Who? Channel 7's John Kleekamp is here with that part of our Team 7 coverage. John?
Frank, whoever does end up taking over for JP will definitely have their work cut out for them. Listeners have a lot of choices up and down the dial during the morning hours. It truly is a jungle out there. just as the giant billboards proclaim, he was JP on JR in the AM. And according to his legions of loyal listeners, he was the undisputed king of morning drive time radio.
I will miss him. The drive to work will be longer each day. And it's just an institution. You wake up and you turn JP on. He was always cheerful, intelligent, knowledgeable. We'll miss him.
I think he was a one-of-a-kind person. He just had a heart as big as the world.
JP was one of those few icons in Detroit. He was a giant, and he's been on the air ever since I was listening to the radio, and I don't think you can replace somebody like that.
In the highly competitive race for morning listeners, J.P. McCarthy came out on top with a near 11 share, even beating out his friend and rival, Dick Purton.
All right. Thank you, Professor. Have a lovely day. Okay.
But Purton has a good point when it comes to ratings. While WJR does hold the overall lead in sheer numbers of listeners, it's Purton's morning program on WKQI that's tops in the all-important 25 to 54-year-old demographic.
So you go for a demographic, and fortunately that's where we have been able to be successful in the 25-54 game. But what that does is it means to me with JP's passing that WJR will not really be in that much trouble. I think they'll lose some audience. I don't think it'll be terribly significant because the people that listen to WJR, they really don't have too many other places to go anyway.
Where Purton does see a problem is for the person who is eventually going to be given the daunting job of filling JP's shoes.
Whoever takes JP's place, at the beginning anyway, I feel very sorry for, because I think you don't want to be Deborah Norville, you want to be Katie Couric. So I don't know what really will happen.
Purton says Jimmy Lawrence, Jimmy Barrett, and Paul W. Smith are the names bandied about as possible successors, but WJR has not made any announcements yet and says it's too early to think about a replacement for J.P. McCarthy. Diana?
All right, thank you very much, John. At 8:10 tomorrow morning, the 29 major stations in the region will honor J.P. McCarthy with a moment of silence. The last time that was done was a tribute to the victims of the Oklahoma City bombing.
Well, these stories are also making news on this Thursday evening.
A .250 lifetime, 30-year-old third baseman